Hello, and welcome back to Rolling Movie Recaps. Today, we are going to explain an American biographical drama film called Lean on Me, which was released in 1989. In this fact-based film, a New Jersey superintendent, Dr. Frank Napier, watches helplessly as East Side High becomes the lowest-ranked school in the state. With nowhere else to turn, Dr. Napier enlists maverick, ex-teacher Joe Clark to take over as principal of the declining school. Unfortunately for Clark, before he can focus on improving the student board state exam scores, he has to somehow rid the school of its gang and narcotics problems. Eventually, he is successful, but unorthodox methods lead to a clash with city officials that threaten to undo all his efforts. The film is based on a true story. To know the story in full detail, watch the video till the end. But before we begin, beware of spoilers, watch out and take care. And I hope you enjoy the video. The film, Lean on Me, opens with a brief sequence showing a man of color named Clark, played by Morgan Freeman, who is starting out at a well-run East Side High in the 1960s, alienating his principal and being transferred out. It continues 20 years later with Clark more or less happily teaching in a good school in a nice neighborhood. Then, we get an updated look at East Side High, which has become the town's deeply troubled, mostly minority high school, where violence, drug dealing, and intimidation are facts of life, and little or no learning takes place. John Avildsen, the director, is so concerned with showing us the hell of East Side High that he goes overboard. The corridors look like a cross between a prison riot and a Hell's Angel rally. Clark was a man singularly responsible for turning that rough high school into an ice-clean place of learning. Despite his intention being honest and righteous, his methods and approaches were a little orthodox. There obviously is only one man capable of turning this situation around, and so, Crazy Joe Clark is brought back to East Side. Morgan Freeman, as Clark, spends most of the movie yelling at people. Most scenes feature Clark either berating students or teachers, usually with a bullhorn in hand. His first act is to call an all-school assembly, gather all the druggies and troublemakers on stage, and expel them en masse. Then, he begins to stalk the school corridors, enforcing his own reign of terror. He orders all of the graffiti painted over. He orders everyone to learn the school song on pain of expulsion. He suspends a teacher for daring to stoop over and pick up a piece of scrap paper while Clark was talking. He insults teachers in front of students, behaves in an erratic and irrational way, and conducts himself like an autocratic dictator. Clark was a seriously troubled man. As the movie progresses, we wait for Clark to undergo a personality change, but with the exception of one half-hearted apology, Clark never does change. He is an arrogant bully, a Morton who demands instant, unquestioning obedience. He certainly does clean up East Side High, and the students indeed were able to pass a state proficiency exam, so the school could remain under local control and not be taken over by the state. African-American history teacher Joe Clark is then seen instructing some enthusiastic teenagers at East Side High School in 1967 Paterson, New Jersey. His class is interrupted by fellow African-American teacher, Frank Napier, who alerts Joe that their union is holding a meeting without them. Joe interrupts the meeting and demands to know what is going on. Other union members criticize Joe's antics and reveal that they have accepted a raise and agreed to transfer Joe to another school. 20 years later, in present-day 1987, East Side High has devolved into crime-ridden chaos. Dr. Frank Napier, now the superintendent of Paterson's school district, tells Mayor Don Bodeman that a new bill has just passed, requiring schools to achieve a 75% passing grade on a basic skills test administered to all students. If a school does not pass, the state of New Jersey will take it over. Frank informs Bodeman that only 38% of East Side students passed the test the previous year and suggests Joe Clark take over as the new principal. Although Bodeman is wary of the idea, he approves, and Frank visits Joe at the elementary school where he works. Despite Joe's initial resistance, Frank persuades him to take the job, insisting this is Joe's chance to make a difference in the world. On his first day at Eastside, Joe immediately shows his tyrannical side when he shouts at the department heads for no reason, demands that nobody speak during the meetings he holds, and requests the names of every hoodlum, drug dealer, misfit, and miscreant in the student body by noon. At an all-school assembly, the troublemakers, whose names were submitted, are called to the stage. Joe addresses the rowdy crowd, who finally takes notice when he expels the 100 or more students on stage and they are ushered out by security. Joe tells the remaining students they could be expelled just as easily and informs them that a practice exam for the basic skills test will be administered in 2 weeks. They have 110 days before the actual test, and he warns that their futures will depend on it. Parents call an emergency meeting that night. Leona Barrett Lynn Thigpen, a local community activist, whose troublemaking son was one of those expelled that morning, accuses Joe of denying deserving kids an education. Joe stands by his decision, preaching about the responsibility he feels in his new position, and many of the parents applaud him. Leona angrily leaves and vows to destroy Joe. The next morning, a freshman named Thomas Sams, who was expelled for skipping class and smoking crack cocaine, pleads with Joe to let him return, claiming he was accused of crimes he did not commit. Joe does not believe him, but allows the boy another chance, promising to follow his every move. At Joe's insistence, the school's graffiti-covered walls are repainted, and the cages surrounding the food counter in the cafeteria are removed. At lunch, Joe stops Thomas from stealing another student's food, and then humiliates him by demanding he and his friends sing the school song, while everyone else remains silent. The boys do not know the song, and Joe announces a new rule that every student must learn the song and be prepared to sing it on command. Joe goes to the classroom of Mrs. Elliott, the chorus teacher, to inform her that she must teach the song to the entire student body. When she refuses to interrupt the song her students are singing, Joe summons her into the hall and fires her for insubordination. He later suspends Mr. Darnell, an English teacher and assistant football coach, for disrespecting him in the cafeteria, and Miss Joan Levias, the vice principal, warns Joe that he has caused chaos. After the practice exam is administered, Joe demands Levias track down the results when they do not arrive soon enough. 2 students alert him that a fight has broken out and he runs to the scene. There, Joe finds a drug dealer, one of the students he expelled, attacking a student named Kid Ray. Learning that the drug dealer snuck in through a side door, Joe demands that security chain all the side entrances closed, despite fire codes. Later, Joe sees Kanisha Carter, a student he taught in elementary school, stewing in the hallway outside his office. When he asks Kanisha what is wrong, she reveals that her mother has kicked her out of the house. Joe and Levias escort Kanisha home after school to tell Mrs. Carter what a good student she is. Mrs. Carter reveals that she gave birth to Kanisha when she was only 15 years old and later developed a drug problem. Now that she is getting sober, she does not like herself and thought Kanisha would be better off without her. Joe offers to help find Mrs. Carter a job, and she agrees to take her daughter back in. A local newspaper refers to Joe as Crazy Joe Clark and accuses him of fighting with his students' parents. Frank warns him that he stands to alienate his students and staff the way he alienated his wife, and forces him to reinstate Mr. Darnell, who, as a young African-American male teacher, provides a good role model for Eastside students. Fire Chief Gaines arrives at the school for a surprise inspection, but Joe demands he file an official request and sends him away. Soon after, Kid Ray informs Joe that he is quitting school. Guessing that Ray is selling drugs, Joe warns the boy that he will be dead in a year. He sees Thomas and his friends roaming the halls and demands to hear the school song. They sing a beautiful, new arrangement of the song and inform him that the new chorus teacher, Mrs. Powers, taught it to them. Joe finds Mrs. Powers and pretends to be angry, before congratulating her on the new arrangement and declaring it Eastside's new alma mater. The practice exam results finally arrive, revealing that only 33% of the Eastside students had passed. Joe addresses the teachers, telling them it is their failure, and demands that a new peer tutoring program be instituted. Students begin to thrive under Joe's rigid disciplinary tactics, and he becomes more cheerful around them. Meanwhile, the angry Leona Barrett crusades to have Joe fired and makes a deal to back Bottman's next mayoral campaign if he agrees to oust the principal at her behest. Having learned that Joe has chained the side entrances to the school, they conspire to send Fire Chief Gaines back for an inspection. Frank and Mr. Rosenberg, the school district attorney, come to Eastside to warn Joe about the plan. When several students approach Joe with their problems, at the same time, Miss Levias tries to get Joe's attention, but he shouts at her. She later accuses him of being an egomaniac who takes sole credit for the work of his entire staff and asks to be transferred to a different school. On the day of the basic skills test, Joe gives the students a pep talk and gives an only nod to Miss Levias as he stresses the importance of teamwork. A mess. Powers performs the song, called Lean on Me, and the students join her, prompting Miss Levias to crumple the transfer request Joe handed her that morning. Later that day, Fire Chief Gaines arrives, accompanied by Barrett, and Joe is arrested for breaking the law by chaining fire exits. That night, Leona Barrett addresses the school board at City Hall, demanding Joe's termination and imprisonment. Inside his jail cell, Joe hears his students walking up the streets, protesting his arrest. They congregate outside City Hall, and Barrett addresses them through a megaphone, urging them to go home. Mayor Bottman releases Joe from his cell to address the students, but they refuse to leave when he asks them to do so. A mess. Levias arrives with a piece of paper and demands that Joe read it. He then gleefully announces that Eastside has passed the basic skills test. The students rejoice. Sometime later, Joe shakes his students' hands as they accept their diplomas at graduation. To watch more explanations of these kinds of movies, click on the videos on your screen. And don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. Kindly like the video and subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss any new videos. And at last, I will say, stay safe, stay well. Thanks for watching.